Imagine sacrificing everything for your family, only to find out your wife had another man she called the real one. What I uncovered next shattered my world, but it also set me on a path I never saw coming. Just imagine if I told you that I ended up profiting from my wife's betrayal. Yeah, you heard that right. It all started when I stumbled upon a hidden box among her belongings. And trust me, what I found inside flipped my entire world upside down. But I'll walk you through how everything unfolded. While you're here, drop a comment. Let me know where you're tuning in from. I'd really like to know. They say the most painful wounds are often the ones you can't see. That couldn't be truer when it came to Amelia. She had this knack for delivering those invisible jabs. It didn't happen all at once either. It started with small things, a cutting joke here, a backhanded comment there. "Wow, Damon," she'd say with that sickly sweet smile. Another culinary masterpiece, burnt pasta this time. What's next, screwing up boiling water? She'd laugh like it was all in good fun, but deep down we both knew the truth. These weren't innocent jokes. Tonight, though, she took things to another level entirely. We were having dinner at her sister's place, a small family gathering. I had been dreading it all day because I knew exactly how these things usually played out. Amelia thrived in the spotlight, and tonight I was her main act. "So, Oliver," she began, setting down her wine glass with a dramatic flair, "what did you accomplish today? Did you finally finish folding the laundry? Maybe you got around to fixing that shelf you've been working on for weeks?" She even threw in air quotes around working on, like my efforts were some sort of joke. I barely had a chance to open my mouth before she barreled on. "Oh wait, I bet you spent the whole day trying to figure out how to use the vacuum." "It's fine, honey. Technology's just never been your strong suit." The room broke out into laughter. Her sister giggled, her mom chuckled politely, and even her dad gave me one of those condescending looks, the kind that tied my stomach in knots. I plastered on a smile, but inside, it felt like someone had dropped a weight on my chest. I wanted to speak up, to defend myself, but the words wouldn't come. It was like my voice was stuck somewhere deep inside me. Then came the final dagger. "Honestly," she said with a grin that hit harder than any insult, "sometimes I wonder if I married a husband or adopted a third child. What do you think, Mom?" Every laugh around the table echoed louder in my mind. Each one drove the humiliation deeper, but that night, little did Amelia know, was a turning point. Things were about to change. Drastically. "I start packing his lunches and laying out his clothes," Amelia announced with a grin that lit up the table like a stage spotlight. That comment earned her a solid round of laughter, even from her father, who usually held back. I felt the heat rush to my face as I clenched my fists under the table, trying to keep my cool. The urge to yell, to tell her to cut it out, was almost overwhelming. But what good would that do? She just twisted around like she always did. "Oliver, can't you take a joke? You're so sensitive," she'd say, painting me as the uptight, humorless one. So, instead of giving her the satisfaction, I swallowed my pride, along with a mouthful of bland casserole. Amelia had this way of hogging the spotlight, but not in a way that drew people to her. No, her brand of attention-seeking came at the expense of everyone else. She liked making others feel small. It seemed to be the only way she could feel big. But that wasn't the only time she humiliated me. No, there's another incident that still replays in my mind like a bad dream. We were at a friend's house for a casual dinner, a small gathering of close friends, people who had been at our wedding, who'd celebrated life's big moments with us. These were the people I trusted most, which made what happened next cut even deeper. The dining room was warm and cozy, with plates of pasta and glasses of wine spread out across the table. The conversation was light, the kind of relaxed evening you looked forward to after a tough week. I should have known better. I should have seen it coming. "Can we just take a moment to appreciate how lucky I am?" Amelia's voice sliced through the chatter, drawing everyone's attention. All eyes turned to her as she smirked and set her wine glass down for dramatic effect. Not everyone gets a husband who's not just a stay-at-home dad, but the stay-at-home dad. "Ladies and gentlemen, meet Oliver, king of folding laundry and warming baby bottles." She lifted her glass as if she were giving a toast in my honor, her smirk sharp enough to cut glass. Polite chuckles rippled across the table, but my stomach twisted. I forced myself to look at my plate, silently willing her to stop there. But of course she didn't. "Seriously," she continued, her voice carrying that mocking lilt that made my skin crawl, "I don't know what I'd do without him. Well, except maybe live with a man who has ambition. But hey, not every guy's cut out for a real career, right? Some of us just have to settle for, what's the term again? All right, Mr. Mom." This time the laughter was louder, more awkward. Even my closest friends chuckled nervously, unsure whether they should find it funny or pity me. My grip on the fork tightened to the point where I thought it might snap in two. Amelia, I finally said, my voice low and controlled, a warning tone she should have recognized by now. But as always she brushed it off. Oh, come on, Oliver, she said, leaning back in her chair like some melodramatic villain in a soap opera, swirling her wine glass for effect. You're always so sensitive. It's just a joke. A joke. Always with the jokes. But I wasn't laughing. Not anymore. I mean, it's not like you're out there conquering the world. You're at home, folding diapers. Amelia sneered, her words dripping with condescension. If you're happy being the guy who gave up his dreams to play babysitter, who am I to judge? That was it. That was the final straw. My chair scraped loudly across the floor as I stood up, heart racing in my chest. The room went dead silent, all eyes locked on me. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not again. You think you're funny, Amelia? I asked, my voice low but as cold as steel. You think it's a riot tearing me down in front of our friends? I scanned the room briefly before turning my focus back to her. Let me remind you of something in case you've conveniently forgotten. The silence grew heavier as the tension in the room thickened. Amelia's smug expression faltered for the first time. When you got pregnant, I continued, voice unwavering, you begged me to stay home. You told me you couldn't give up your career, that you needed me to hold things together. You said I'd bounce back, that I'd figure it all out because I was strong enough. And like an idiot, I believed you. I gave up everything, my job, my dreams, because I loved you. I thought I was doing what was best for our family. I turned to the others at the table, my gaze hard. You all sit here laughing at her jokes, but you don't know the truth. I sacrificed my future so her career could thrive, and now she's using that sacrifice as a punchline to humiliate me. The only sound in the room was the faint ticking of a clock somewhere in the background. Amelia blinked, momentarily caught off guard, but it didn't take her long to retaliate. How dare you, Oliver, she hissed, her face flushing red with anger. How dare you humiliate me in front of my friends like this? You're just trying to make yourself look good because you can't handle the truth. She jabbed a finger at me, her voice rising. You're useless. This isn't about me, it's about you. You can't stand not feeling like a man for 5 minutes. It's pathetic. Her words hit me like a slap to the face, the venom in them stinging deep. For a moment, I felt the rage boil up inside me. I thought about shouting back, about unleashing every ounce of hurt and fury I'd bottled up over the years. My fists clenched, my jaw tightened. But then, something shifted inside me. Suddenly, I saw it all for what it was. She wanted me to fight back, to stoop to her level. And she wasn't worth it. Not anymore. Haven't you done enough? I said quietly, my voice steady and calm. This is too far, Amelia. I won't let you do this to me anymore. I didn't wait for her to respond. I turned and walked away, leaving her venomous words behind me like a distant echo. By the time I got home that night, my head throbbed from the weight of everything that had just gone down. The house was eerily still, save for the faint hum of the dishwasher running in the kitchen. I took a deep breath and handed a bundle of cash to Sophia, our nanny, who had stayed to watch the kids while we were out. Thanks, Sophia, I said softly, offering her a tired but grateful smile. Of course, she replied, giving me a sympathetic look before heading out. The door clicked shut behind her, and I stood there in the quiet house, feeling the enormity of the night settle over me. This wasn't just about the fight. It was about everything I had endured. But tonight? Tonight marked the beginning of the end. No problem, Mr. Oliver, Sophia said with a smile as she slung her bag over her shoulder. The little ones were angels tonight. Have a good night. Good night, Sophia, I replied quietly as she stepped out the door. The house fell into a peaceful silence, a rare and fragile calm that I knew wouldn't last long. Amelia wasn't the kind of person to let things slide. Sure enough, less than 20 minutes later, the front door burst open. Her heels echoed sharply against the hardwood floor as she stormed inside, still wearing her coat. What the hell was that, Oliver? She demanded, her eyes blazing with anger. Good to see you too, I replied dryly, remaining seated on the couch. Don't start with me, she snapped, her voice like a whip. You humiliated me in front of our friends tonight. Do you even realize how out of line you were? I let out a heavy sigh and ran a hand through my hair. Humiliated you? Amelia, you've been tearing me down for months. I've kept my mouth shut the whole time, but tonight? Tonight you pushed me too far. I couldn't take it anymore. She crossed her arms, standing stiffly like a wall of ice. I don't drag your name through the mud. They were jokes, Oliver. Light-hearted jokes. If you weren't so sensitive, you'd see that. Jokes? I repeated, my voice rising as frustration surged through me. Calling me a useless husband? A man without ambition? That's what you think counts as a joke? You've been chipping away at my self-respect every chance you get. And now that I finally stand up for myself, I'm the one who's in the wrong? Her jaw tightened, her eyes hardening as she tossed her coat onto the nearest chair. Maybe, she shot back, if you put half as much effort into actually contributing to this family as you do into playing the victim, we wouldn't be having this conversation. That hit a nerve and I could feel the anger boiling over. I stood up abruptly, unable to contain the frustration any longer. Contributing to this family? I repeated bitterly. Are you serious right now? You begged me, to stay home when you got pregnant. You didn't want to lose momentum in your career. You promised it would just be for a few years, and that I'd have no problem getting back on track afterward. I trusted you, Amelia. I gave up everything because I believed in you, in us. My voice echoed through the room and for a moment, neither of us spoke. This wasn't just about tonight's fight. It was the culmination of years of resentment, sacrifice, and broken promises. I gave up everything for this family because you asked me to, I said, my voice tightening with the weight of those sacrifices. Amelia rolled her eyes and scoffed. Oh, stop being so dramatic. You could have done more. You should have been more ambitious. If you were actually successful, we could have afforded a full-time nanny. But instead here we are. Her words hit harder than a slap. I felt my jaw clench as I stared at her, disbelief and frustration swirling inside me. You're unbelievable, I muttered, keeping my voice low but firm. You've completely lost touch with reality. First of all, I do take on small freelance projects when I can. I'm bringing in some money, so don't act like you're the only one supporting this family financially. But you're right about one thing, this can't go on. I can't keep living like this, being torn apart every single day. I stayed to help hold this family together to support you. But you've made that impossible. Amelia didn't answer right away. She just stood there, glaring at me like I was the villain in her story. Finally, she let out a dismissive scoff, turned on her heel, and marched toward the bedroom. I'm done with this conversation, she called over her shoulder before slamming the door behind her. Good night. The next morning, she barely even looked at me. We moved around the house like strangers, not speaking a word. She got ready for work with an expression so cold it could freeze the air between us. As she grabbed her bag and headed for the door, I forced out a polite, "Have a good day." She didn't respond, just walked out without a second glance. I stayed behind, scrubbing plates and wiping down counters while my mind raced in circles. Divorce. The word echoed in my thoughts, weighing heavier than ever. It was starting to feel like the only way out. Maybe, just maybe, if I left, Amelia would finally understand everything I did for this family. Maybe she'd see what she had lost. But at the same time, a small part of me wondered if she'd even care. I was done sacrificing my entire life for a woman who treated me like an afterthought, a convenient outlet for her frustrations. I had put my career on hold so she could thrive in hers, but now I was left wondering if all of it had been a mistake. Staying was becoming unbearable. Around noon, I moved to the bedroom to tidy up. The shelves and dresser were cluttered with trinkets and framed photos, and I absent-mindedly dusted them. Amelia's vanity was pristine, as if it had been set up for a showroom. Bottles of perfume and neatly arranged makeup lined the surface. I wiped it down, but something in the closet caught my eye, a small stack of boxes tucked away on the top shelf. Curiosity tugged at me. I hesitated for a moment, but then my frustration and instincts overruled my better judgment. What could Amelia possibly be hiding up there? Without thinking twice, I reached up and pulled one of the boxes down. I carefully pulled the box down, noticing it was a sleek black gift box tied neatly with a ribbon. It felt heavier than I expected. My fingers shook slightly as I lifted the lid. Inside, a small card rested on top of what looked like an expensive watch. The handwriting on the note was unmistakably Amelia's, her neat, deliberate style with those flourished ends she always added to her letters. The words on the card stopped my breath cold. To the real man in my life. No. With all my love, Amelia. I stared at the note as the words punched me square in the chest. The real man. Noah. My mind scrambled to make sense of it. Noah? Who the hell was Noah? Amelia had never mentioned anyone by that name, not a coworker, not a friend. But the message was crystal clear. There was someone else, someone she saw as more of a man than me. Anger surged through me, all the frustration and humiliation from the past few weeks boiling over at once. Suddenly, everything clicked. The constant jabs at my ambition, the way she mocked me at every opportunity, it was all leading up to this. She'd been demeaning me while sneaking around behind my back. But if she thought she was going to tear me down and waltz off into the sunset with this guy, she had another thing coming. I needed proof. Something solid. Something that wouldn't give her any wiggle room to manipulate the truth or turn this around on me. Taking a deep breath to steady my nerves, I placed the note back in the box and carefully returned it to its spot on the shelf. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. As I stood there, an idea crept into my mind. A calculated plan that almost made me smirk in spite of the fury swirling inside me. I knew exactly what to do. Swiftly I swapped the watch with something more fitting. I tucked the real watch away in my drawer, and in its place at the bottom of the box, I left an unpleasant surprise, the kind of thing one might usually flush away. With the box meticulously restored, I put it back on the shelf as if it had never been touched. The week that followed was as miserable as I'd expected. Amelia had perfected her role as the wounded victim, floating around the house like a ghost. Every interaction was frosty and clipped, her tone sharpened by quiet resentment. Most of the time she didn't speak to me at all. It was impressive, really, her ability to make herself seem wronged while simultaneously ignoring the fact that she'd been tearing me down for years. One night, I noticed her phone sitting unattended on the kitchen counter. My heart sped up as I reached for it, the urge to uncover more secrets propelling me forward. I quickly swiped to unlock it, only to be met with a password screen. Of course. I tried every combination that came to mind, our anniversary, the kids' birthdays, even her parents' wedding date, but nothing worked. She had changed the password. Defeated but not surprised, I placed the phone back exactly as I'd found it. Amelia was getting better at hiding things. But if I couldn't access her phone, I'd need a different approach. I wasn't giving up that easily. Not when I was this close to the truth. I knew I needed a new way to track her. The next morning, while Amelia was upstairs getting ready, I waited, my gut already telling me something wasn't right. She stayed in the bathroom longer than usual. When she finally came downstairs, I almost didn't recognize her. She was dressed to perfection. Sleek black dress, high heels, her makeup flawless. She didn't even put this much effort into meetings with her biggest clients. Big day at work? I asked, trying to sound casual, though I couldn't hide the suspicion in my voice. She didn't bother to answer. Instead, she grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "Don't wait up," she said flatly and left without so much as a glance back. I stood there for a moment, staring after her, and then it clicked. The watches. I bolted upstairs, opened the closet, and pulled out the box again. Inside, hidden away, was the GPS tracker I had secretly placed. My chest tightened as I stared at the app on my phone, watching her location appear in real time. This was it. Without wasting another second, I dialed Sophia. My voice came out rushed. "Hey Sophia, can you come over to watch the kids for a few hours? Something urgent just came up." "Of course, Mr. Oliver. I'll be there in 10 minutes, she replied without hesitation. As soon as she arrived, I gave her a quick thank you and bolted out the door. The drive that followed was a blur. My eyes remained glued to the GPS app while my thoughts raced. My grip on the steering wheel tightened, my knuckles turning white as I sped through the streets, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Finally, the tracker led me to an upscale restaurant, one of those dimly lit, trendy spots where everything from the ambience to the clinking of wine glasses screamed exclusivity. I parked and took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. As I stepped inside, the soft conversations, the gentle piano music, and the faint scent of expensive wine all hit me at once. But I wasn't there to admire the atmosphere. I was here for Amelia. A polished hostess greeted me with a professional smile. "Table for one?" "Yes, please," I said evenly, keeping my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. She led me to a small table in the corner, tucked away from the main dining area. "Can I get you started with anything?" she asked, placing a menu in front of me. "Just coffee," I replied, not bothering to look at the menu. My mind was elsewhere, focused entirely on finding Amelia. Then I saw her. Across the room, Amelia sat at a table with a man I didn't recognize. His face was unfamiliar, but their body language told me everything I needed to know. They leaned in close, laughing softly, their hands briefly touching across the table. The intimacy in their gestures hit me like a punch to the gut. For a moment I froze. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the faint background music. Slowly I raised my phone, my hands trembling as I snapped a few photos. I captured everything, her smile, the way she looked at him, the way they held hands. Each click of the camera felt like another piece of my world crumbling. I couldn't unsee it. Amelia reached into her purse and pulled out a small, familiar box, the same one I had found in the closet. My jaw tightened as I watched her slide it across the table. Noah's grin widened as he opened it, and Amelia, She smiled, really smiled. It was the kind of warm, radiant smile she hadn't given me in years. I couldn't stand there any longer. I moved with deliberate calm, making my way across the room, my heart pounding in my ears. Reaching their table, I pulled out the empty chair and sat down without hesitation. I folded my hands neatly on the table and spoke with unsettling composure. "Good evening." Amelia froze. The color drained from her face as her eyes locked onto mine. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked like she'd just seen a ghost. "Oh, Oliver," she finally stammered, her voice barely a whisper. What are you doing here?" Noah's reaction was just as satisfying. The smug, confident air around him disappeared in an instant. His face twisted in confusion, then panic, as though he'd suddenly realized the walls were closing in on him. Amelia's carefully constructed world was crumbling, and she knew it. Her hands trembled slightly as she leaned forward, her voice shaky. "Oliver, please. Let's not do this here. Let's go home and talk." I let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "Now you want to talk? That's rich." My voice rose with each word, drawing the attention of nearby tables. "Funny because all you've done lately is mock me, tear me down, and treat me like I'm nothing. And now I finally get it. Now it all makes sense." I turned to Noah, fixing him with a glare. "So, this is the real man you've been dreaming about, Amelia?" Noah shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his earlier confidence completely gone. He raised a hand as if to placate me. "Look, man. Don't," I snapped, cutting him off with a glare sharp enough to pierce steel. Amelia's hands trembled as they gripped the edge of the table. "Oliver, it's not what it looks like," she stammered, her voice desperate and uneven. "Noah is just a friend." "A friend?" I repeated, my voice simmering with fury. "That's what you're calling this? After everything I just saw?" I leaned forward, my jaw clenched, my anger barely contained. "You really think I'm stupid, don't you? Oliver?" "A friend," I repeated coldly, my voice dripping with venomous sarcasm. "That's the story you're going with?" Noah glanced at Amelia, his discomfort now palpable. He blinked rapidly as if struggling to come up with a response. But before he could say another word, I raised a hand to silence him. "Don't bother," I said, my voice firm and final. "I'm done here." I stood up, adjusting my jacket and sparing Amelia one last glance. She sat frozen, her face etched with shock and disbelief. The perfect facade she had worked so hard to maintain had shattered before her eyes. "You two look perfect together," I said quietly, my tone biting with bitter finality. Without another word, I walked away, leaving them to stew in the mess they had created. "I could cause a scene right now," I said, my voice laced with venom, "but I'm leaving before I give in to the urge to flip this table." With that, I turned on my heel and strode out of the restaurant, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't stop until I reached my car, where I sat in silence for a moment, my hands gripping the steering wheel as I tried to steady myself. Later that night, I kept myself busy by making phone calls, briefly explaining my situation to a few lawyers and scheduling consultations for the next day. I wasn't going to waste any more time. An hour later, I heard the front door creak open. Amelia walked in, mascara smeared and her eyes red from crying. She looked wrecked, but I wasn't moved. "Oliver," she began, her voice trembling, "please don't jump to conclusions. I can explain." I stood, the anger I'd been holding back now boiling over. "Explain?" I snapped, my voice echoing through the room. "What's left to explain, Amelia? I saw everything. The restaurant. The man. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending there's more to the story." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't about to let her manipulate me with crocodile tears. "I'm not spending another night under the same roof as you," I said coldly. I grabbed a duffel bag, tossed in a few clothes and slung it over my shoulder. Without waiting for a response, I walked out, slamming the door behind me. I needed space, anywhere that wasn't suffocating with her presence. I called my friend Mark, who didn't pry. "You can crash here as long as you need," he said simply. It was exactly what I needed to hear. The next morning, I sat across from an attorney and laid everything out, the affair, the lies, the emotional abuse. "My wife has been having an affair," I said plainly. "She found herself a new man, so I figure I'll let her have him." Over the following days, I started letting people know what had happened. Reactions varied. Some expressed shock, others anger, and a few offered awkward silences. But I didn't care. They deserved the truth. Amelia could spin whatever lies she wanted, but I wouldn't stand by and let her rewrite the narrative to make herself the victim. The divorce proceedings moved faster than either of us had expected. True to form, Amelia wasted no time playing the victim, crafting a story that painted me as a lazy, unmotivated burden. She made me out to be a man who couldn't hold a job, a man who supposedly relied on her for everything. But I came prepared. My so-called failures? I said firmly during a mediation session, my voice calm and measured. They are the sacrifices I made for this family. Amelia begged me to stay home when she got pregnant. She was terrified of losing her career momentum, and I gave up my own dreams to support her. I wasn't going to let her lies define me. Not anymore. I gave up my job, my dreams, because I trusted her, I said firmly, my gaze unwavering. She promised me it was temporary, that once we were back on our feet, I'd have my chance again. But while I was home raising our kids and managing the house, she was having an affair. Amelia's lawyer shifted in his seat, visibly uncomfortable as I slid a folder across the table. Inside were the photos I had taken that night at the restaurant. The undeniable evidence spoke louder than anything I could say. And let's not pretend I wasn't contributing financially, I added. I took on freelance work while running the household. I did everything I could to keep things stable. In the end, the divorce was finalized with a relatively even split of our assets and shared custody of the kids. Amelia would have them during the week while I'd have them on weekends. It wasn't the arrangement I had hoped for, but it was fair under the circumstances. As expected, her parents sided with her completely. They even moved closer to support her, helping with the kids and around the house. I didn't resent them for it. They were just doing what they thought was best for their daughter and grandchildren. I, on the other hand, needed to refocus, both for my own sanity and for the future I wanted to build for myself and my kids. After the dust settled, I sought stability in my day-to-day life, but I didn't stop there. I'd always had an interest in entrepreneurship, particularly in online businesses. So I started a small side project, building a website that offered digital tools and resources for freelancers. At first, it was just a hobby to fill the long evenings when the kids weren't with me. To my surprise, it gained traction. Within a year, the site was bringing in enough income for me to seriously consider leaving my day job and focusing on it full-time. The success felt like a breath of fresh air after so much pain and loss. It was mine, something I had built on my own terms. Meanwhile, Amelia wasn't faring as well. Word of her affair spread through our social circles, and people started keeping their distance. Even her professional reputation took a hit when one of her colleagues, who I had learned was a close friend of Noah, let the truth slip during a casual conversation. Just like that, Amelia found herself isolated, left to pick up the pieces alone. And me? Well, I've come a long way since that day I walked out of the house with a duffel bag over my shoulder. The business I started now thrives, providing not just a steady income, but also a sense of purpose. Ironically, one of the best sellers on my site is related to time management. And yes, I did treat myself to something symbolic when the business hit a major milestone. Now I own a luxury watch. Funny how things work out, isn't it?